All right, let's get to the newsroom, Bob. I'm still going with my method of having a like column and a dislike column on this one.
And how long is each column?
Well, the dislike outweighs the like,
Yeah,
but
you scroll a lot.
there were stronger examples of both in this episode than there were last week. And like I say, I'd rather hate the newsroom than not care about it.
Ah, good, good.
So I'm going to start with some likes. Um, you, I'm getting them where I can. So I
Okay.
actually like the CEO or the president alpha dogging Charlie and Will. Someone needs to put those guys in their sanctimonious place, even if it's a smug asshole like Reese Lansing. So it's funny when they march up with their recorder in hand, and I love that there was their tech ignorance that did them in. Charlie's just standing there pressing play. Wait for it, it's coming, and then nothing. And then Reese actually says, "Here, let me see it," like he's gonna help. Oh yeah, here you go. Just throws it in the garbage.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's no harm in showing those guys look like idiots because 95% of the time they're geniuses. So
Yeah, and apparently he never took their threat seriously anyway, because he went ahead and told them, or told Nina Howard, is what we found out. So basically, it was their overestimation of themselves that was their own undoing on that one.
right, yeah.
Okay, I also liked Mackenzie teasing Neil about his obsession with Occupy Wall Street. I'm just
Okay.
glad that,
Uh,
of course, then he gets all one percenter on. He's like, oh, well, those shoes were $1,200, so of course you wouldn't understand.
Your big
And
first world problem is walking in the rain when you couldn't get a car. Oh.
and it totally works on her. Blah.
Yeah.
And she says, okay, you can keep looking into it. Um, anything else you liked, Bob?
Well, on the spot, I should have prepared a list. No, honestly, this episode was pretty bad for me. I just felt like I was watching acting more than a show. Dare I say it that bluntly, but I everyone's turning into caricatures, and this witty banter of going back and forth is starting to feel more and more like, it's almost like this could be better as a play.
Hmm.
Than as a movie or a TV show, or if they would just even film it on a stage, it would almost work better for me. That's a complicated thing to say, or without really backing it up, but I guess
Yeah,
I'm
just
trying.
because the way you suspend disbelief are different in a play than in a TV show, and you
Yes,
expect it
exactly.
to be hyper stylized like that. But let's get to some examples. This one definitely pings some of the big alarm bells I have with the show. Issue number one, Jim on the Romney tour bus. Talk
Holy
about
cow.
self-congratulatory. So Jim's on the bus, and he keeps asking questions about inconsistencies in Romney's position, and he gets shot down, and other reporters glare at him. But no one else will do it. If he doesn't, no one will, Bob. He's making a difference with all that integrity that's just dripping off of him, because that's the difference between him and all the other reporters. He's there to do some real journalism, unlike those other hacks who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I thought it was also kind of pathetic how the show um, decided to be self-aware and sort of plug the hole of being so hindsight is 2020 with the whole, like Romney is such an inconsistent, poor politician. Because in the end, they get Jim to like convince that other girl that he's interacting with. What's her name? The blonde that's Meryl
He,
Streep's daughter in real life.
he calls her Maggie, is all I know.
Yeah, he calls her Maggie number two. He like so the show takes a cheap shot at like all Jim has to do is point out Romney's inconsistency on some like women's issues thing because we get this glimpse in that women's issues is really big for this chick and like she's just blinded by women's issues enough to not be her in tune self. So it's kind of like it backfired for me because on the one hand it's supposed to be like, yeah, because Romney's inconsistent about women's issues, but on the other hand it's like, so anybody who wants to speak up for women's issues is too stupid to know when it's the wrong time. So I didn't like that at
Mm,
all.
yeah, I'd really love to talk to an actual campaign reporter, and I have a hunch, a suspicion, that things aren't quite so black and white as the newsroom makes it look.
Right. It's like either lay over and play dead or get kicked off the bus, basically. There's like the only two options.
Right. Anyway, issue number two, and this actually ties into yours. I didn't have that one marked down, but you make a good point. But I'm going with Sorkin-esque women.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
This one wasn't a huge issue this time, but we have Maggie. She starts freaking out when she learns about the side effects of the drugs she's taking for Africa. She just can't handle it.
Oh
Even though the
yeah.
drugs aren't kicking in, she swears they are, and she gets cranky. And yeah, so the placebo effect is just nailing her hard, and she's making a fool of herself. Um, oh, and then Mackenzie had one too. She has that one moment when she's talking to Will. She's looking in his eyes, and she can't remember the right word to say. She just says, "Oh, and I can't remember the right word," and then she giggles, because that's what women do when they're in front of Will.
Well, and the placebo effect one also fit in my category of like I'm watching acting and not a show. It was so over the top. Like, does a newsroom ever function that way? She just runs in and Mackenzie's like, "Oh, here we go. I gave her the warning before I walked into the team meeting that she was going to freak out about the side effects on the side of the enter stage left." And then she comes in, "Oh, la 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 la," and Mackenzie's just like at the head of the meeting and is like says something snarky under her breath. Well, I told you. And then somebody at the table's like, "Da, da, 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 da," and it's just like, and then Mackenzie walks off by saying like, "Well, this meeting was a waste of time," and I'm like, "Yeah, because that would never happen. Like, it's just totally made up."
Fair enough. And I feel like if I'm responsible, I'm going to put in the caveat here of I'm probably hypersensitive on the women characters things. And this episode did have Will and Charlie making fools of themselves too, so it's not only women.
That's
It's
true.
just that there is a tradition of hysterical women on the show, so any instance of it jumps out to me.
Right. Yes. And Sloane. Sloane also had her own. Well, anyway, it's not in the same category.
But
Um,
it was weird though, because so I didn't write this down, but what happened? So she's talking to Don. Oh no, this was pretty annoying.
okay. Yeah.
In just the self-congratulatory aspect. He's like the only economist with a conscience, right? She comes in and tells Don, "Don, what am I going to do? I think people should buy this if they want to make money, but it's immoral, so what should I do?" And then Don says, "Hey, you have a good point, but do whatever your executive producer says." And then she goes and says, "Don agrees with me," and so her executive producer comes and yells at Don, who's like, "What
But
did I?"
first takes her by the hand and
Oh
like a little
yeah.
child into the room, and then we get a dialogue play off of that. "Don't you ever do that to me again," and da 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 da. It's like, or you could have just hit him while he was trying to do it in the first place. Like, I don't know, it just felt weird.
And then he says, "Don't mess with my being an executive producer." It's like, "Well, what else did I tell you?" "Oh, to do what my executive producer says." It's like, "Oh, sorry, dude. I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to get from that whole exchange."
Right. It didn't feel like it progressed any consequential story, like something that I'm going to care about next episode. It was just like a la 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 time filler. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Okay, so big issue number 3. Will's mission to civilize is back in full effect because he's
Yeah.
the most wonderful man in the world.
Right.
Uh, oh, you might be on my side, but I think that there are people who actually like Will and his mission to civilize. But for example, the episode starts off with Will getting pissed at how no Republicans would speak up for a gay soldier, and it's weird because I agree with Will that that's an outrage, but I'm annoyed at the blatant attempt at flattery and stealth, smug superiority that it has there.
Right. A little over the top and a little too on the nose. It's so like Aaron Sorkin in delivering these lines through his character Will is like, "This is how it should have really happened. How dare you, Anderson Cooper, for not being like this?" Or whoever he's talking to, but like, "Where was the news anchor who did it as brilliantly as I would have written it a couple years later?"
That's right. And then on Will's mission to civilize, he just decides to go ask Nina Howard not to tell America that Will didn't have the flu on September 11th, and she does it. He civilizes her, and then
Yeah.
then he asks her out, and she refuses. But then, of course, they go out anyway, or at least they do something together where she has to have a shower afterward. Maybe they're going mountain climbing or something.
Playing tennis. We don't know.
All right. So this Genoa thing, we're sort of off the major criticisms I have or the dislikes I had, but this Genoa thing, it's fictional, right? There's not an actual news story
Yeah,
that I missed on this one, is there?
That's what I get, which is kind of weird because the show historically, at least season one, didn't go so strongly on any direction of a fictional story like it is for this one, for this season. And it seems like it's going to culminate in this blowing up because we already saw a flashback in the first episode, and then they decided flashbacks weren't the way to do this anymore, which it's like pick a way to do the storytelling. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it changes things in the show because we don't know how this one's going to turn out. We just know that there's going to be litigation, and they have to have lawyers that will makes their life harder. And I actually have sympathy for a lawyer whose own client is making her life harder. But anyway,
So
that's what you get with Will.
now, isn't there supposed to be some parallel to a real life screw up by the news media around the same time? I should have researched that better, but
I heard on another TV podcast that apparently there was something that CNN did in the 90s or something like that that's vaguely similar to this.
oh wow, they have to reach all the way back into the 90s. You think it'd be more timely than that, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but this Genoa thing, so far it sounds pretty bad in the context of the show. White phosphorus, Willie Pete, possible
Yeah.
sarin. Eee.
Right. And then of course there's this whole like comic relief of tweets having to be faxed, which was just it was funny like the first two times, but on like the 17th punchline of reading a faxed tweet is like I don't know.
Yeah.
Run the gag a little long.
On this, I do like that Charlie and even Mackenzie are a little bit skeptical about it, which may not be asking for much, but for them to be real news people, I just feel like that was missing a little bit in the first season. At least they're trying to head off the 2020 hindsight issue a little bit.
Right, right. Yeah.
Well, that's mostly what I got. Anything else you want to bring up about this episode, Bob?
Oh, just that I'm not sure why I'm watching this other than just because it's fun to talk to you about it every week, but otherwise and there's these isolated moments of, half smirks for me where I'm like, heh, hmm. But then like you're done watching it and you're like, that was just silly.
Yeah, I can't get Amy to watch this one anymore at all, by the way.
Really? She got it. Yeah, that's funny because Eva watched the whole first season with me and she's not watching the second one with me either. So
Well,
says
I
something.
I got Amy on cultural broccoli grounds because everyone was talking about the first season, but I think America is over the newsroom, and that means I can't really convince her that she's going to need it at her cocktail parties and things like that anymore.
Really? Is that the word on the street? Because I'm not as in tune as you, but I feel like blogs and popular opinion and banter has moved on out there on the internets.
It's not entirely. It's not like the drop off from season 2 to season 3 of Jersey Shore, where you still need to be watching Jersey Shore to be in on the national conversation, and then all of a sudden you didn't.
Right.
But but yeah, it's diminished from the first season, that's for sure.
Okay.
But we'll catch you next week for the 4th episode.
Keep watching.